Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the chance to stand before you today. I want to share something simple yet powerful. It's a principle that transformed my thinking, reshaped my actions, and changed the trajectory of my life. I call it, for years, I believed that progress came through massive leaps. I thought if you weren't diving headfirst, then you weren't really serious. I saw people talk about going all in like it was the only path to breakthrough. But let me tell you, I've seen people go all in and lose everything. I've seen people throw their time, their money, their heart into something without any wisdom or restraint, and they didn't come out stronger. They came out broken. And it wasn't because they lacked passion, it was because they lacked perspective. Somewhere along the way, I realized that the people who survive, the ones who keep going and growing, aren't the ones taking the biggest risks. They're the ones taking smart ones. They're the ones who measure the cost, who know their limits, who understand that stepping out in faith doesn't mean throwing wisdom out the window. And that's where this idea, risk 2%, comes into play. I know to the world it sounds too small. They say 2%, that's nothing. That's hesitation. That's fear. No, it's wisdom. Because 2% is the difference between staying stuck and stepping forward. It's not about gambling your life away. It's about positioning yourself for steady, sustainable growth. It's about testing the waters, not to avoid discomfort, but to protect the calling that's on your life from being buried under the rubble of impulsive decisions. I remember when I first applied this in my own life. There was an opportunity in front of me, one that stirred my heart and called me higher. But I didn't jump in blindly. I took 2% of what I had, 2% of my time, 2% of my resources, and I moved. I tested the ground. I prayed, I worked, I learned. And when that 2% bore fruit, I knew it was time to risk a little more, and then a little more. You see, 2% doesn't mean small dreams. It means wise beginnings. It means leaving room for growth, room for course correction, room to fail without being destroyed. Because you will fail. I don't say that to discourage you. I say it to set you free. You will take some wrong steps. You will have setbacks. But when your risks are measured, your failures won't break you. They'll teach you. And some of us need to stop waiting for perfect conditions. We're waiting to be 100% certain, 100% ready, 100% funded, 100% confident. And in the waiting, we're wasting time. The beauty of the 2% mindset is that it breaks the paralysis of perfection. It says start now, start small, start where you are. You don't need to uproot your life or abandon everything you know to begin walking in the direction of your purpose. You need a small step. You need 2%. You don't have to throw yourself off a cliff to trust God. Sometimes faith looks like putting your foot in the water to see it part. Sometimes it looks like planting a seed and waiting. You don't plant your entire field with one seed. You start with what's manageable and you grow from there. Now let me be clear, this is not a formula for comfort. This isn't about avoiding discomfort or protecting your pride. No, this is a call to courage, real courage. The kind that doesn't chase attention or applause, the kind that builds steadily and quietly, brick by brick, so that when the storms come, and they will, what you've built can stand. And I'll tell you something else. The enemy would love nothing more than to see you waste everything in one reckless move. He'd love for you to get burned so badly that you never try again. He wants your failure to be fine. But when you risk wisely, when you move thoughtfully, when you give 2% with purpose, you rob him of that power. You gain ground without sacrificing your foundation. I've watched too many people give up not because they failed, but because their failure was too big, too fast, and too unprepared for. But I've also seen others, quiet, steady, disciplined, take small risks, experience small wins, endure small losses. And over time, they became immovable. They became fruitful. They became strong, not because they never fell, but because they never fell far enough to stop climbing. And some of you right now, you're holding back because you think you have to go all in or not at all. You're waiting until you feel brave enough, skilled enough, sure enough. And I want to tell you, you don't need to risk it all. You just need to risk something. That 2% of your time you've been wasting, redirect it. That 2% of your income you've been hoarding in fear. So that 2% of your energy you've been giving to things that drain you, reclaim it. Risk 2% not because it's small, but because it's sustainable, because it keeps you moving, because it trains you in discipline, teaches you in failure, and rewards you in. And when you risk wisely, you begin to see the fruit, not always immediately, not always dramatically, but steadily, undeniably, and what once seemed impossible, what once felt distant and overwhelming, becomes familiar and attainable. This formula changed my life not because it gave me fast results, but because it gave me faithful ones. It taught me that you don't need to conquer everything in a day to be victorious. You just need to move forward with intention, with purpose, and that's why I tell you today, don't wait for perfection. Don't wait for certainty. Take a step, just one, just 2%, because that 2% done in faith, done in wisdom, can lead to a harvest far greater than you can imagine. We live in a world obsessed with instant results. We want things fast. We want change overnight. We want to leap from where we are to where we wish we were, without the waiting, without the labor, without the slow and steady process of growth. But I've learned something that shook me out of that mindset. Consistent action, even small, seemingly insignificant action, compounds over time. When I talk about risking 2% and earning 10%, I don't mean it happens in a moment. This isn't a get-rich-quick formula. This is a way of life, a pattern, a posture. It's something that grows slowly in the soil of obedience and discipline. And the beauty of this principle is not just in what you risk, but in the power of repetition, of doing the right things over and over, even when they don't seem to be working right away. Let me be honest with you. There were days I risked that 2% and saw nothing come of it. No breakthrough, no change, just silence, just more of the same. And in those moments, I was tempted to quit, to think it wasn't worth it. But I kept going. I kept showing up. I kept planting those seeds. And then one day, quietly, subtly, something shifted. Fruit started to appear. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough to know that something was changing. You see, we're fooled into thinking that impact comes from intensity. But more often, real transformation comes from consistency, from the kind of daily faithfulness that no one else sees. It's in the small things, the daily habits, the disciplines, the quiet decisions that no one applauds. That's where the 10% return begins to take root. You risk a little time every morning to be still before God. You risk a little pride to admit you don't know everything. You risk a little comfort to do the hard thing again and again. And little by little your life changes. Not with fireworks, but with faithfulness. There's something powerful about small, consistent effort. You may not see the results right away, but they're happening. Something is moving beneath the surface. Something is being shaped in you. Think about water dripping on a rock. One drop means nothing. 100 drops make no mark. But over time, that gentle, repetitive drop will wear away stone. That's the power of steady obedience. That's what happens when you risk 2% again and again. It starts to reshape your character, your mind, your future. This is why so many people give up. They don't stay long enough to see the compound effect. They expect growth without patience, reward without repetition. But those who endure, who show up again and again, who risk small pieces with great faith, they're the ones who see the promise unfold. They're the ones whose lives begin to overflow with meaning, purpose, and yes, I want you to think about this. If you gave just 2% of your time every day to building something, learning a skill, growing in wisdom, deepening your faith, that's only about 30 minutes a day. Most people waste that without thinking, but 30 minutes a day over a year, that's over 108. That's 5 full work weeks. Imagine what could happen if you invested 5 full weeks of focused effort into something important in your life. And now imagine doing that every year. This is the secret the world won't tell you. They'll sell you hacks, shortcuts, quick fix. But I'm telling you, faithfulness is the long road, and it's the only road that lasts. The fruit that comes from it doesn't rot, it doesn't collapse under pressure, because it was built slow, it was built right. Let me go deeper. This isn't just about external progress, it's about the internal transformation that comes from showing up every day, from doing the right thing when no one is watching, from saying yes to what is good even when it costs you. Every act of consistency is a strike against the part of you that wants to give up, settle down, or turn back. You are training your soul to endure. You are learning how to press on when the feelings fade. That is priceless. There's a reason Scripture talks about seed time and harvest
You don't plant a seed and expect fruit in a day. You plant, you water, you wait, and while you wait you stay faithful. Because something is happening in the unseen, something is being prepared in the hidden place, and when the time is right, the harvest comes. Not because you forced it, but because you were consistent. Some of us need to stop despising small beginnings. Stop thinking that a little effort doesn't matter. Stop waiting for the big break and start making small faithful steps today. Because one day you'll look back and realize that every small risk, every small decision, every 2% step, it wasn't small after all. It was a foundation. It was a path. It was the reason you arrived. And I want to say this with all the weight it deserves. Your future is shaped by your patterns, not your passions, not your dreams, your patterns. What you do every day is shaping who you are becoming. If you want to see a different outcome, you don't need more inspiration. You need new habits. You need small risks, repeated with courage and consistency. It's not glamorous. It won't get headlines, but it will change your life. And here's the miracle of it. You won't just earn 10%. In time, you'll look around and see that the gain wasn't just what you got. It's who you became in the process. You became steady. You became disciplined. You became trustworthy. You became someone who doesn't give up when things get hard, someone who stays when others run. And that kind of person, built by small, consistent risks, can be trusted with greater things. The world is always looking for the fastest way up, but I believe God is looking for those who will stay faithful with a little, who will risk 2%, even when it doesn't look like it's making a difference. Because those are the ones He can trust with the increase. Those are the ones who will carry the reward without being crushed by it. You don't have to change everything today. You just have to begin. Take one step, risk, and do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Watch what happens when consistency becomes your foundation.
You know, when people hear the phrase risk 2%, they sometimes laugh. They say it's too little, too cautious, not bold enough. But I want you to hear me. Real courage doesn't require massive leaps. Real courage often looks like the quiet, trembling decision to take one small step forward when everything in you wants to run. Sometimes that 2%, that little push beyond your comfort zone, is the bravest thing you'll ever do. We tend to associate courage with grand gestures, with people who abandon everything, sell all they have, cross oceans, or stand on stages. And yes, there's courage in that, but that's not the only kind. In fact, I've seen more strength in someone who chooses to show up silently day after day than I have in someone who charges ahead blindly with nothing left to lose. It doesn't take wisdom to be reckless, but it takes deep, quiet strength to act with restraint and faith. Some of you have been paralyzed not because you lack passion, but because you believe the lie that you have to move mountains with your first step. And so you don't step at all. You wait until you feel bold enough, ready enough, skilled enough. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to move in the presence of it. It's looking at your weakness, your inadequacy, your uncertainty, and saying, even so I will not stay stuck. And that's where this principle, risking just 2%, changes everything. It breaks the pressure of perfection. It silences the lie that if you can't do everything, you shouldn't do anything. Because that 2% risk, it's not about how much you do. It's about who you're becoming by doing it. It's about the act of faith itself. It's about saying, God, I'm scared. I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I trust you enough to take one step. I remember a season in my life where I felt like God was calling me to speak up, to step out, but I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel worthy. I thought, who am I? What do I have to offer? The fear was overwhelming. So instead of stepping into it all at once, I decided to risk just a little. I reached out to one person. I shared one thought. I wrote one page. It didn't feel like much, but it was the crack in the dam. One small act of obedience, one moment of courage, and it opened the door to everything that followed. That's what courage looks like most days. It's not the roar of a lion. It's the whisper of a heart that refuses to give up. It's the decision to speak when silence feels safe. It's the choice to try again when failure feels fresh. It's showing up with your 2% when you wish you had 100%, but you trust that God can take your little and multiply it. And hear me, you don't need to conquer your fears all at once. Some of you are carrying years of shame, pain, regret. You've built walls to protect yourself, and now those walls are keeping you from living. You don't need to tear them all down today, but maybe you can risk peeling back one brick. Maybe you can open the door a crack. That small risk, your 2% of vulnerability, might be the beginning of healing. We often wait until we feel strong to act, but some of the most powerful moves you will ever make will happen when you feel weak, when you feel exposed, and that's when grace meets you. That's when God shows up. Not when you've cleaned everything up, not when you've figured it all out, but when you bring Him the little you have, trembling hands and all, and say, "This is all I can give right now." And He says, "That's enough." Let me tell you why this matters. Because if you believe that courage only counts when it's big, you'll miss the daily invitations to grow. You'll miss the tiny moments where the real battle is fought in your mind, in your heart, in your choices. That phone call you've been afraid to make, that's courage. That apology you've been holding back, that's courage. That dream you buried because you were scared to fail, dig it back up, give it your 2%. Watch what happens. There are doors in your life that will only open from the other side of that small risk. And you may never know what's waiting until you take the step, but I promise you, the most dangerous thing is not risking too much, it's refusing to move at all. Because comfort zones become prisons, and fear becomes your ward. But when you choose courage, even in tiny doses, you start to reclaim your life. And no, not every 2% risk will lead to success. Some will hurt, some will stretch you, some will leave you with questions. But even then, you will not be the same. You will be stronger. You will be wise. You will have learned to trust the process more than the outcome. And over time, those small risks become a pattern of courage. They build a life that refuses to bow to fear. This is how the formula works. You risk 2% again and again, and each time, something inside you grows. You start to realize that your limits were never fixed, that you are capable of more than you believed, and that's where the 10% gain begins to emerge, not just in what you achieve, but in how deeply you are changed. So I want to ask you, what does 2% look like for you today? What's the small, courageous step you've been avoiding? Don't wait for the fear to disappear. It might not. Don't wait to feel brave. You probably won't, but trust this, courage isn't about the absence of fear, it's about faithfulness in the face of it. ChatGPT said there's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, and maybe you felt this too. I used to think the real fight was out there. I thought it was the market, the critics, the competition, the lack of resources, the missed opportunity. But with time, with pain, with a lot of silence and wrestling, I began to realize something much deeper. The real battle is within. You see, the greatest enemy of progress isn't failure, it's self-sabotage. It's that quiet voice in the back of your mind, telling you, you're not enough. It's the shame that follows you from past mistakes. It's the fear that speaks louder than truth. It's not just the fear of falling short, it's the belief that if you do succeed, you won't be able to hold on to it. That's what holds most people, not the size of the mountain, but the war in their mind. So when I talk about risk 2%, and earn 10%, it's not just about money or business or outward results. It's about the inner transformation that happens when you finally decide to stop being your own enemy. When you stop fighting yourself every step of the way, because until you deal with what's going on inside, it doesn't matter how much you gain on the outside. You'll always find a way to tear it down, to retreat, to run. This is why the smallest steps matter so much. Because every time you risk that 2%, it's not just about what you're doing, it's about what's happening in you. That tiny act of courage is you defying your old narrative. It's you saying, I don't have to be ruled by fear. I don't have to live in regret. I don't have to be perfect to make progress. That's the true fight. That's the battle that determines everything else. I remember a season where I was stuck, not because there weren't opportunities, but because I didn't believe I deserved them. I would shrink back. I'd sabotage good things before they even had a chance to grow. I was afraid of being seen, afraid of being known. I was afraid that if I really stepped into what God was calling me to, people would find out I wasn't as strong as I looked. But the moment I took just a small step, risking even that 2% of honesty, of authenticity, that's when freedom began to break through. And I realized the cost of staying hidden was far greater than the cost of being seen. You can't build a meaningful life while pretending you don't belong in it. You can't walk in purpose
while dragging shame behind you. At some point you have to stop rehearsing your failures and start believing the truth about who you are, that you're not too far gone, that you're not disqualified, that what you've been through doesn't discredit you, it prepares you. This is what makes the 2% risk so powerful. It's manageable, it's human, it meets you where you are. Because when you're locked in a battle within yourself, you don't need a tidal wave. You need a trickle of hope. You need one small moment of clarity, one decision to believe a different story, one move that breaks the cycle, even just for a second. That's the crack that lets the light in. And maybe no one else sees it. Maybe no one else knows the weight of what you're carrying, but that step you took, that call you made, that lie you refused to believe, that conversation you finally had, that was everything. That was you winning the battle within. And when that battle is won, everything else starts to align. So many of us are living in reaction. We react to fear, to past pain, to the expectations of others. We carry wounds that have never fully healed, and we build our lives around avoiding pain instead of stepping into purpose. But purpose will always cost you something. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you control. It will cost you the version of yourself that keeps playing small to keep the peace. But the gain is real, because you don't just earn something outside, you become someone new inside. One of the most dangerous lies we believe is that our value is based on our performance, that if we don't achieve enough, produce enough, impress enough, then we're not enough. But when you risk just a little, consistently, with faith, you start to see that your worth was never in what you could earn, it was always in who you already are. That's what gives you the strength to keep going. That's what silences the inner critic. That's what turns the risk into reward, not because you earned it, but because you were willing to be faithful in your weakness. And let me say this clearly, healing is not a straight line. Sometimes you'll take a step forward and 2 steps back. Sometimes the old lies will creep in louder than before, but that doesn't mean you're losing. That doesn't mean the risk was wasted. Growth is messy. It's not about perfection. It's about direction. Are you moving forward, even if it's slow? Are you choosing truth, even if it's hard? Then you're winning, even if no one else sees it, even if the results haven't shown up yet. The most dangerous thing you can do is wait until you feel whole to begin. If you wait to feel worthy, you'll wait forever. But if you risk what little you have right now in your brokenness, in your doubt, in your fear, that's where transformation starts. That's where chains fall. That's where clarity comes. That's where you stop running from yourself and start walking with God. You weren't called to play it safe. You weren't created to just exist, to blend in, to survive. You were created to thrive. But thriving doesn't come by accident. It comes by choosing again and again to fight the battle within, to silence shame, to reject fear, to risk your 2%, and to trust that God will do more with it than you could ever imagine. This is how the 10% gain begins. Not from striving, but from surrender. Not from having all the answers, but from being honest about the questions. Not from proving yourself, but from trusting the process. That's the paradox of real strength. It's born in weakness. It grows in humility. It multiplies through obedience. So take the risk, not because you feel ready, not because you know the outcome, but because the war in your mind has already cost you too much, and it's time to step into freedom. It's time to reclaim the narrative. There's something I've learned that has reshaped the way I look at every challenge, every decision, every moment of hesitation in my life. It's the power of consistency, and I'm not talking about consistency in terms of perfection. I'm talking about showing up faithfully, humbly, and consistently with your 2% again and again, because that's where the miracle unfolds. Not in a single moment of greatness, but in the daily choice to keep going, even when you feel small, unsure, and unseen. We live in a world obsessed with results, with the end product, with overnight success, with highlight reels. But real life doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. God doesn't work that way. His way is often quiet. It's slow, it's deep, and it's faithful. If you're willing to trust the process, to bring your 2% every day, every week, every season, you'll begin to see a transformation that goes beyond what you ever thought was possible. But that requires something many people never learn: the discipline to endure without immediate result. The ability to keep showing up when it feels like nothing is changing. That's what separates those who merely dream from those who actually live in the fullness of their calling. Because dreams are beautiful, but without consistent action, they stay locked inside your imagination. The risk 2%, earn 10% principle only works if you keep sowing, if you keep planting seeds, even when the soil looks dry. And I want you to hear this: just because you don't see fruit right away doesn't mean the seed isn't growing. There are things happening beneath the surface that you can't see. Roots are taking hold, character is forming, trust is deepening, and in due time, what was once invisible will break through. But only if you don't give up, only if you keep showing up. There have been countless times in my life where I felt like what I was doing didn't matter. Days where the words felt empty, where the effort felt wasted, where the risk didn't seem worth it. But when I look back now, I see how every single one of those days was part of something far greater than I could understand. In the moment, God was weaving something, not just around me but inside me, and He still is. You may not be able to see it now, but the daily faithfulness, the choice to risk your 2% again and again, that's what builds a life of depth and purpose. That's what earns the not always in money or recognition, but in peace, in clarity, in a sense of wholeness that no applause or achievement could ever bring. I've seen people chase results so hard, so fast, that they burn out before the breakthrough comes. They start strong, bold, passionate, but they lack the discipline of consistency. So when resistance comes, and it will come, they retreat. They assume they're failing. They assume God's not in it. But resistance doesn't mean you're off course. Often it means you're right on target. The enemy doesn't attack what's stagnant. He attacks what's rising. He attacks the ground where fruit is about to grow. So if you're facing obstacles, don't let that discourage you. Let it remind you that what you're doing matters, that the consistency you're choosing is building something that hell can't shake. And let me tell you something else. Consistency doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means being willing to start again every time you fall. It means not letting failure become your identity. It means giving yourself grace while refusing to let go of your assignment. It means understanding that faithfulness is often quieter than excitement, but infinitely more powerful. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is get up and try again, to write another page, to pray another prayer, to forgive one more time, to risk your 2% today, even though yesterday felt like it didn't move anything. That's strength. That's endurance. That's what transforms a life. And if you do that, if you keep going, you'll begin to see something amazing happen. Not just in your circumstances, but in you. The same 2% that felt scary before will start to feel like your new normal. What once required courage will become part of your character. You'll realize that you're not just someone who dreams, you're someone who builds, and that kind of person, that's who changes the world. Not through loud declarations, but through quiet, relentless obedience. Let me speak to those of you who feel weary. Maybe you've been consistent, but you're not seeing what you hoped for. Maybe you're tired of risking, tired of hoping, tired of holding on. I get it, but can I encourage you? You're closer than you think. You're deeper than you know. And what you've built in secret, through the quiet choices, the private prayers, the tears no one saw, that is what's going to sustain you when the breakthrough comes. We often ask God for the reward, but we don't always appreciate the process that prepares us to carry it. Consistency is what makes you ready. Without it, the very thing you prayed for could crush you. But when you've walked with God step by step, day by day, bringing Him your little again and again, when the blessing finally comes, it won't define you. It'll simply confirm what you've already become. That's why I say risk your 2% every day. Not because you see immediate results, but because you trust the one who called you, the one who multiplies, the one who sees the seed and knows the season. And as you do slowly, faithfully, without fanfare, you'll start to earn your 10% in wisdom, in strength, in joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, in a legacy that outlives you. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for clarity to be absolute. Don't wait for permission from people who don't understand your calling. Just start, and when you fall short, start again. Keep building, keep trusting, keep walking, because your consistency, your daily 2%, is not in vain. It's the very thing that's shaping the life you were made to live.